I didn't come back for closure, Julian. I came back because I still want you. Vivienne Cole said it quietly. That was the worst part. If she had raised her voice, if she had come in crying, if she had made a scene in the middle of the Arden Hotel's lobby beneath the brass chandeliers and the tired-eyed portrait of some dead financier, Julian might have found something simple to do with the moment. He could have protected Tessa from it. He could have walked Vivienne outside. He could have turned the whole thing into a problem with doors and umbrellas and taxis. But Vivienne stood at the far end of the hotel corridor in a charcoal coat darkened by rain, her wet hair tucked behind one ear, and looked like a woman who had spent 3 years rehearsing one honest sentence. Tessa was 6 feet away, holding Julian's black wool coat over one arm. The last of the premiere crowd had drifted toward the elevators. Champagne glasses sat abandoned on cocktail tables. Somewhere behind the closed doors of the screening room, the final bars of an old French film spilled softly into the hallway, strings, then a lonely piano note. Julian looked at Vivienne. Then he looked at Tessa. Tessa's face did not change much. That was one of the first things he had noticed about her. Most people announced pain before they understood it. Tessa Rowan became still. Only her right hand betrayed her. Her thumb had found the thin silver ring on her ring finger and was turning it slowly, once, twice, again. Julian had learned that meant she was trying not to leave. Tessa, he said. Her eyes lifted to his. He did not move closer to Vivienne. He did not lower his voice as though this belonged in a corner. This is Vivienne, he said. She was the person I loved before I knew how to stay. For the first time, Vivienne's composure flickered. It was not anger. It was something quieter and worse. Recognition. Tessa looked at her, then back at Julian. Okay, she said. The word was perfectly calm. Julian knew better than to trust it. Tessa, she held out his coat. Then don't explain it tomorrow, she said. Explain it while I'm still standing here. Rain crawled down the long windows beside them, turning the city lights into smeared gold and red. Julian could see the faint reflection of all 3 of them in the glass, Vivienne at one end of the corridor, sharp and pale against the dark, Tessa in her midnight blue dress, Julian's coat in her hands, Julian himself suspended between them, looking like a man who had somehow mistaken a door for a wall. Neither woman moved. For a few seconds, he could hear only the air conditioning and the soft, expensive hush of the hotel. Then Vivienne gave a small, humorless breath. You have a girlfriend, she said. I do. That wasn't in your letters. You stopped answering before I could get very good at letters. Her eyes narrowed, not because he had hurt her, but because he had hit the exact place where the truth lived. Tessa's gaze moved between them. There were letters. Julian did not look away from her. A few. Years ago. And you never told me. I should have. You should have told me a lot of things, apparently. There it was. Not loud. Not dramatic. A line in the floor. Julian had always believed he was good at difficult conversations. He could settle a dispute before it became a fight. He could make a stranger feel heard without promising them anything. He could take the awkward chair beside someone at a dinner party and somehow leave them laughing. But Tessa had never needed him to rescue her from awkwardness. She needed him not to make her live inside it. Not here, he said carefully. Not like this. Tessa let out one short laugh. Interesting choice of phrase. He deserved that. Across the corridor, Vivienne shifted her wet coat around herself. Her chin was lifted, but he knew the small tension in her jaw. He knew that expression. It meant she had decided to be brave and was now waiting to see whether bravery would humiliate her. The thought landed hard in him. 3 years ago, he would have stepped toward her first. 3 years ago, he would have seen her fear and made room for it until there was no room left for his own. But Tessa was standing there with his coat in her hands. Julian took it from her, not because he wanted it, but because it gave him an excuse to touch her fingers. Her hand was cold. The night had begun so differently. Tessa had been laughing when they arrived at the premiere, one hand looped through his arm as the rain began to spit against the sidewalks outside the Arden. She had leaned close beneath the awning and said, "Tell me again why people in independent film always look like they're either about to accept an award or ask to borrow money. Because those are the only two things independent film allows." That sounded rehearsed. "I've been waiting all day to use it. You should get out more. I came to a movie with you. You came to a movie because I promised there would be free champagne. That is still technically culture." She had smiled then, the real smile, the one that made her look younger without making her look less composed. For months into being with Tessa, Julian had begun to understand that she made affection look almost accidental. She never performed it. She slipped it into the spaces between jokes, into the way she remembered whether he took coffee before or after breakfast, into the way she waited half a second longer at crosswalks because she knew he was always looking at buildings. She had not wanted to come to the premiere. Not because she disliked the director, who had been a college friend of Julian's, but because she had spent the entire previous week in meetings that ran too late and involved too many men saying things like "let's circle back" while quietly refusing to circle anywhere. But Julian had texted her that afternoon. "Wear the blue dress." "Why?" "Because I like it." "That's not a reason." "It is to me." She had replied with a picture of the dress laid across her bed. "You're lucky I'm easy to manipulate." He had written back, "Tessa, you once negotiated a rent increase down by $300 through eye contact. I contain multitudes." At the party, she had let him introduce her to people. She had stood beside him while someone from a film magazine talked too long about grief and monochrome. She had escaped with him to the bar near midnight, where they shared a plate of fries because the catering had been decorative rather than useful. There had been no warning. No strange message. No missed call. No premonition. Only a woman in a charcoal coat appearing in the hallway after the final screening, carrying rain on her shoulders and a past Julian had never explained. The Arden's lobby doors opened with a burst of wet wind. A hotel employee hurried by with a stack of folded umbrellas. Somewhere outside, a horn blared once, then again. Tessa glanced toward the entrance. "My car is supposed to be here," she said. Julian checked the app on his phone. The map was a red snarl of traffic around the hotel. 27 minutes, he said. "Of course it is." Vivienne looked toward the windows. "Mine is worse." "That seems fitting," Tessa said. Julian almost smiled, but caught himself. Tessa saw it anyway. "Don't," she said. "I wasn't. You were about to. I was going to admire the fact that you can still be funny while planning my funeral. That is not what I'm doing." "No." She looked at him. "No," she said. "I'm deciding whether I need to know who I've been dating." The words were soft enough that no one passing down the hallway could have heard them. They hit him harder than anything Vivienne had said. Julian looked from Tessa to Vivienne. "Come with me," he said. Neither woman moved. He nodded toward the hotel bar at the end of the lobby, half hidden behind dark green velvet curtains. "It's quiet," he said. "There's space. And no one has to stand in a hallway while I make this worse." Vivienne gave him a weary look. "You say that as though you're already in control of it." "I'm not." That answer stopped her. Tessa's thumb turned the ring again. Julian held her gaze. "But I'm here," he said. For a moment, she looked as if she might tell him that being present was not the same thing as being trustworthy. Instead, she walked toward the bar. Vivienne followed after a beat. The Arden's lounge was almost empty. Rain drummed softly against the wide windows, and a bartender in a white jacket polished glasses with the exhausted patience of someone who had seen too many rich people fall apart elegantly. Julian chose the deepest booth, a curved banquette beneath a framed black-and-white photograph of Manhattan in 1948. He did not sit between them. That would have made him the center of the story. He took the chair opposite, where he could see both women clearly. Tessa slid into one side of the booth. Vivienne took the other. For a moment, no one spoke. The bartender came over. "Anything?" "Water," Tessa said. "Same," Vivienne said. Julian looked at the bartender. 3. When the man left, Tessa folded her hands around the empty space where a glass would soon be. "Start," she said. Julian let out a breath. "What do you want to know?" "All of it." "That's not a useful request." "Then make it useful." Vivienne looked down at the table. Julian saw the old instinct in her: retreat, reduce, disappear before anything could be pinned to her. He remembered how often he had mistaken that instinct for mystery. "I met Vivienne 8 years ago," he said. "At a bookstore in the West Village." Vivienne gave the smallest smile. "You pretended to know something about Joan Didion." "I did know something about Joan Didion." "You knew the cover was white." "It was a very recognizable cover." Tessa watched them. Not with jealousy exactly. With concentration. Julian continued. "We were together for almost 5 years." Vivienne's eyes remained on the tabletop. "We lived together for 2, he said. "In an apartment on West 72nd. "The one with the terrible radiator," Vivienne said. "The one with the terrible radiator. And the neighbor who played trumpet at 2 in the morning." "You liked him." "I liked him because he was terrible. It made me feel less alone." That sentence sat in the booth for a second longer than it should have. Tessa looked at Vivienne. Julian did too. Vivienne swallowed. Then she lifted her head. "I left for London," she said. 3 years ago." "You left without warning," Julian said. "I left with warning." "You just didn't like the warning. You sent me a message from JFK. Because if I had tried to do it in the apartment, you would have made me stay." Tessa's eyes narrowed slightly. Julian did not correct Vivienne. Because there was truth in it. He had been good at making people stay. He knew how to make leaving feel cruel. He knew how to turn tenderness into a reason someone should ignore their own fear. He had not done it intentionally. That was what made it dangerous. "Why?" Tessa asked Vivienne. Vivienne looked at her. "Why did you leave?" "The water arrived." The bartender set down 3 glasses and vanished again. Vivienne touched hers but did not drink. "Because Julian started talking about ordinary things," she said. Julian felt something in his chest tighten. "Ordinary things," Tessa repeated. "Breakfast," Vivienne said. "Lease renewals. Which neighborhood would make sense if we ever had a dog? His mother asking whether I wanted to come for Christmas. It was all very sweet. And terrifying," Julian said. Vivienne looked at him. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I loved him." Tessa's fingers closed around her glass. Vivienne did not glance away. "That was the problem," she said. "I had always been good at falling in love with people. I was not good at building a life around it. When it stopped being a feeling and became a structure, I panicked." Julian remembered the note she had left on the kitchen counter. He remembered the blue mug she had forgotten beside the sink. He remembered standing in the apartment after she left, holding the key she had mailed back from London and understanding, with a clarity that felt almost physical, that being loved did not guarantee being chosen. Tessa looked at Julian. "Do you still love her?" The lounge seemed to shrink around them. Julian's hand tightened around his water glass. He had imagined that question before. Not exactly like this. Not with Vivienne across from him and rain against the windows and Tessa's ring turning beneath her thumb. He could lie. He could say no and make the night easier. He could say yes and make it impossible. He chose impossible. "Yes," he said. Tessa did not blink. Julian went on. But that doesn't make what I feel for you less real. A muscle moved in her jaw. Doesn't it? No. How can it not? Because it's different. That is not an answer people say when they want to make someone feel better. I'm not trying to make you feel better. Clearly. Vivienne looked as though she wanted to interrupt, but Julian lifted a hand slightly. Not to silence her. To ask for a second. Tessa leaned back against the booth. You should have told me. I know. How much of this did you expect to stay hidden? I didn't expect her to come back. That wasn't the question. Julian looked at the rain-streaked glass. No, he said. It wasn't. Tessa waited. He forced himself to meet her eyes again. I should have told you there was a door in my past I never fully locked. For the first time that night, the sharpness left her face. Not because he had fixed anything. Because he had stopped trying to. Vivienne stared at him. That's not fair, she said quietly. Julian looked at her. What isn't? You make it sound like I've been standing behind a door for 3 years. You haven't. Her mouth opened, then closed. Tessa's gaze shifted between them. Did you know she might come back? No. Did you want her to? Julian did not answer quickly enough. Tessa looked down. That's what I thought. I didn't know what I wanted, he said. That is not better. No. Vivienne's shoulders drew in. I didn't come here to ruin your relationship. Tessa turned toward her. I don't think you did. The honesty in her voice surprised all three of them. Tessa touched the silver ring on her finger. I think you came here because you wanted something. And I think he didn't tell me enough about you because some part of him wanted to keep that something possible. Julian felt the truth of it settle. It was ugly because it was not dramatic. He had not been secretly waiting for Vivienne. He had not planned a return. He had not betrayed Tessa in any practical, obvious way. But he had carried the unfinished shape of Vivienne with him. And he had allowed Tessa to love him without ever showing her where it hurt. Tessa reached for her glass and took one sip. Here's what happens now, she said. Julian said nothing. I'm not asking you to choose tonight. Vivienne looked at her sharply. Tessa continued. Not because I'm noble. I'm not. I just don't want an answer you give because there's a storm outside and everyone's emotional and I happen to be sitting here. Julian's throat tightened. But tomorrow, she said, we talk again. And you tell me everything. Not just what you think I can handle. Everything that matters. Yes. And Vivienne? Vivienne sat straighter. Tessa looked at her directly. You don't get to show up after 3 years, say you want him back, and then disappear when it gets uncomfortable. Vivienne's expression changed. You're right, she said. And I don't want to be asked to act gracious while you two figure out whether I'm temporary. You won't be, Julian said. Tessa looked at him. That's not yours to promise. He stopped. Then nodded. You're right. The rain did not let up until nearly 2 in the morning. By then, they had said enough truth to make leaving feel stranger than staying. Tessa went home in a car Julian watched pull away from the curb, her face turned toward the window. Vivienne took a room at the Arden because the airport hotel shuttle had been cancelled and because neither of them knew what else to do with her. Julian stood alone under the awning after both cars were gone. The city smelled like wet pavement and cold metal. His phone buzzed. A message from Tessa. Don't come over. He stared at it. Then another message appeared. Not because I don't want you to. Because I need one night where I don't have to watch your face decide what it means. Julian typed 3 different responses. Deleted all of them. Finally he wrote, okay. I'll call tomorrow. Her answer came almost immediately. You better. The next evening, he called her from his apartment. Tessa answered on the fourth ring. "Hi," she said. "Hi. You sound terrible." "I haven't slept." "Good." He laughed once, despite himself. There was silence. Then she said, "She still has the key." Julian leaned against the kitchen counter. "What?" "Vivienne. To the old apartment." He closed his eyes. "How do you know that?" "She told me." "She called." "She called you?" "She asked whether I hated her." "And what did you say?" "I said I didn't have enough information to be efficient about it yet." That made him smile for real. Tessa heard it. "Don't get sentimental." "I'm not." "You are." "I'm relieved you answered." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The landlord wants the apartment emptied by Friday." Julian looked toward the living room. The old apartment had been empty for years, technically. He had moved out after Vivienne left, but she had kept a storage arrangement there with the landlord's permission, a last box of books, old furniture, records, photographs. Things neither of them had been able to deal with when dealing with each other felt impossible. "I know," he said. "Are you going?" "Yes." "Are you going alone?" He let the question breathe. "No." Another pause. Then Tessa said, "What does that mean?" "It means Vivienne will be there." "I'll be there. And I'm telling you because I don't want you to find out later." "That is a low bar." "I know. You say that a lot." "I've had a repetitive 24 hours. Tessa sighed. There was exhaustion in it, but not surrender. "You want me to stop you from going?" she asked. "No." "You want me to pretend it isn't happening?" "No." "What do you want, Julian?" He looked at the rain starting again beyond his windows. "I want you to know," he said. "I'm going because I need to put the past away properly. Not because I want to sneak back into it." Tessa said nothing. "I don't expect you to trust that yet." "You shouldn't." "I know. And if I come?" He could hear the challenge beneath the question. Not jealousy. A demand for reality. "If you come," he said, "you come because you want to. Not because I'm asking you to sit there and suffer for my moral development." She let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "Jesus. Fair." "I'll come," she said. The old apartment was on the top floor of a narrow building off West 72nd. The elevator complained all the way up, and the hallway lights flickered with a stubborn yellow pulse. Tessa stood beside Julian as they waited outside the door. She wore jeans, a black sweater, and the expression of someone preparing for a medical procedure she had refused anesthesia for. "You can still leave," Julian said. She looked at him. "Did you just give me an exit?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you deserve one." Tessa studied him for a second. Then she turned the ring on her finger. "I don't want to leave," she said. "I just don't want to be stupid." "You're not. You don't get to say that either." "I know." He lifted both hands. She almost smiled. The door opened before he could knock. Vivienne stood there in a soft gray sweater and black trousers, her hair tied back. She looked smaller than she had at the Arden. Less composed. More real. "Hi," she said to Tessa. "Hi." Julian stepped inside. The apartment smelled faintly of dust, old wood, and rain trapped in radiator heat. It was not a place he had thought about often. That was the lie he had told himself. Every room held a version of him he remembered too clearly, laughing in the kitchen while Vivienne burned toast, arguing over whether a couch could be both ugly and comfortable, sleeping on the floor during a heat wave because the bedroom air conditioner had died. A cracked glass still sat near the sink. The floor lamp by the window leaned slightly to one side. Tessa noticed everything. Her eyes moved over the bookshelves, the old record player, the faded photograph taped beside the refrigerator. Then Vivienne reached into a box and lifted a picture. Julian saw it before Tessa did. A Polaroid from some summer rooftop party years ago. Vivienne was seated on a chair, smiling at someone off camera. Julian was leaning against her shoulder, eyes closed, looking more unguarded than he had seen himself in a long time. Tessa's face changed. Only slightly. But Julian saw it. Her body moved back half a step. Vivienne looked at the photograph. Then at Tessa. She did not smile. She did not use it like proof. "I forgot that was here," she said. Julian crossed the room and held out his hand. Vivienne gave him the photo. He looked at it once. Then he placed it face down in the box. "This isn't a past I'm ashamed of," he said. Neither woman spoke. "But it is not something I'm going to use to make Tessa doubt where she stands." Vivienne's eyes lifted to his. The room went still. Julian looked at her. "I won't pretend I didn't love you," he said. "I did." The words made Tessa close her eyes for a second. He continued anyway. "But I'm not going to turn that love into a reason she has to feel smaller." Vivienne's throat moved. "And what am I supposed to do with that?" she asked. "Whatever you need to," he said. "But not run." Her face tightened. Tessa looked between them. "You always run?" she asked Vivienne. Vivienne gave a small, bleak smile. "When things become important enough." Something cracked beneath the box at their feet. The cardboard bottom gave way, spilling books, loose photographs, and a stack of old movie magazines across the floor. Vivienne bent down instinctively. So did Tessa. Their hands met at the same edge of the broken box. For a second, neither of them moved. Julian did not step in. He had spent too much of his life deciding what silence meant for other people. Tessa looked at Vivienne's hand. Vivienne looked at Tessa's. Then both of them carefully lifted the box together. "Here," Tessa said. "Hold the side." Vivienne nodded. They packed the rest of the apartment in near silence. But it was not the same silence as before. It had texture now. Questions in it. Possibility. By the time they carried the final boxes downstairs, the rain had stopped. The city was shining under street lamps, every sidewalk slick with reflected light. Julian hailed a cab for Vivienne's things. Tessa stood beside him under the building's stone awning. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said. He nodded. "Thank you for not lying. That's not exactly a medal-worthy achievement. It's more than I expected from you yesterday. That hurt." He accepted it. Then Tessa looked up at him. "You were different in there." "How?" "You didn't erase her to make me feel better." "I didn't want to." "No," she said. "You didn't." Her hand hung between them, uncertain. Julian did not take it. Not until she turned it palm up. Then he touched his fingers to hers. 2 nights later, Vivienne asked Tessa to meet her at a jazz bar in Tribeca to pick up a suitcase a friend had been storing for her. Tessa told Julian she was going. He asked whether she wanted him there. "Yes," she said. "But not because I need a referee. I wouldn't dare." "You should be careful. I'm getting used to your self-awareness." "That sounds dangerous." The bar was low-lit and narrow, all velvet booths and amber lamps. A pianist played something slow beneath the murmur of conversation. Vivienne sat across from Tessa, and Julian took the chair beside Tessa only after she touched the seat beside her with 2 fingers. They had been there less than 10 minutes when a man in a linen jacket approached their table. "Vivienne Cole," he said. "I heard a rumor." Vivienne's expression cooled. "Elias. London finally got bored of you. London has better manners than you." He laughed and looked at Julian. "And Vale. Of course. So the rumor is true." She comes back to town and steals you all over again. Tessa's glass paused halfway to her mouth. Vivienne's shoulders tightened. Julian watched Elias smile, waiting for someone to turn the situation into entertainment. He did not raise his voice. He just moved Tessa's drink gently from her hand to the table, freeing her from the strange pressure of holding something while being watched. Then he smiled at Elias. "No one's been stolen," he said. Elias blinked. Julian continued. "Vivienne came back because she was honest about wanting something. Tessa is here because she doesn't let strangers decide the story for her. And I'm trying very hard not to confuse two intelligent women's patience with a personality trait." A couple at the nearby table laughed softly. Elias's grin faltered. Julian leaned back. "We're having a real conversation," he said. "I know that makes a terrible anecdote, but I'm sure you'll survive." Elias muttered something about getting another drink and walked away. The room resumed moving. Tessa looked at Julian. "You know you don't have to make me look heroic." "I don't." "You just did." "No," he said. "I made him look boring." Her mouth twitched. Then she leaned closer, enough that her shoulder brushed his. "I don't want to be saved," she said. "I know. So why did you do that?" Julian looked at her. "Because I don't want anyone reducing you." Her eyes held his for a second too long. Then Vivienne looked toward the stage. "The singer's about to start," she said. A woman in a green dress stepped to the microphone. The lights dimmed. Julian sat very still between the two women he had once believed belonged to entirely separate parts of his life. He understood now that the problem was not that they had collided. The problem was that he had been careless enough to believe they never could. Later, when the singer finished, Julian stood. "Do you want to get air?" he asked Tessa. She looked at him. "Just me?" "Whatever you want." Tessa glanced toward Vivienne. Vivienne nodded once. "Go," she said. Outside, the rain had returned in a soft mist. Julian held an umbrella over Tessa as they stood under the narrow awning of a closed bakery. For a while, they watched cars slide through the wet street. "You're trying very hard," Tessa said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I have been handed a very clear picture of what happens when I assume love will wait for me to become brave." She looked at him. "And are you brave now?" "No," he said. "But I'm less interested in pretending I am." That made her laugh under her breath. He looked at her profile. "You know what scares me?" she said. "A lot of things, probably. Don't be cute." "Sorry." She turned the ring on her finger. "I'm scared that I'm going to end up being the woman you chose because she was easier to keep." Julian's expression changed. "Tessa." "No. Let me say it. She knew you when you were younger. She knew you when you looked at people like nothing could hurt you. She has history. And I'm the woman who showed up after she left. You are not an after. That's very romantic." "It's true. Truth is not always romantic." "I know." She finally looked at him. "What do you miss about her?" Julian could have given her the answer she wanted. Instead, he looked out at the rain. "I miss the way we used to believe feeling something strongly was enough," he said. "Everything was easy because we hadn't reached the part where we had to choose each other on ordinary days." Tessa went quiet. "And me?" she asked. Julian turned toward her. "You are the first person I haven't wanted to get by on feeling with." Her eyes flickered. He did not touch her. Not until she stepped closer under the umbrella. At 2 in the morning, Tessa did something Julian had not expected. She told him she was going to meet Vivienne alone. "Where?" he asked. "The bookstore on Mercer. The one that stays open late. Do you want me nearby?" Tessa studied him. "Yes. Nearby. Not inside. Definitely not inside. He nodded. The bookstore was warm and nearly empty, its upstairs cafe lit by a few brass lamps. Tessa found Vivienne at a table beside the window with 2 coffees already waiting. "You guessed I'd come," Tessa said. Vivienne looked nervous. "I hoped." Tessa sat down. Outside, rain ran in silver lines down the glass. For a few minutes, they spoke about nothing important. The books piled around them. The awful jazz at the bar. The old apartment's broken radiator. Then Tessa put both hands around her coffee cup. "Why did you come back?" Vivienne looked at her. "I told Julian." "I don't care what you told Julian." That surprised a smile out of Vivienne. Tessa went on. "Did you come back because you love him? Or because you hated knowing he could move on without you?" Vivienne's smile faded. "Both," she said. Tessa waited. Vivienne looked down at the coffee. "I loved him," she said. "I still do. But I also hated the idea that I left and everyone just continued. That he became someone else with someone else. That I was the only person who stayed stuck in the version of us that ended." Tessa's face softened despite herself. "That's honest." "I'm trying." "Why now?" Vivienne looked back up. "Because I saw you." The room seemed to quiet around them. Tessa did not move. Vivienne's voice lowered. "I expected to hate you." "That's flattering." "I expected you to be easier. Colder. More obviously wrong for him. Something I could use to make myself feel justified. And you were standing in that hallway with his coat in your hands and you looked like someone who had every right to be angry but was trying not to become cruel." Tessa's fingers tightened around the cup. Vivienne gave a small, helpless laugh. "And that made everything worse. Because I didn't only want him to look at me." Tessa's breathing changed. Vivienne saw it. She did not move closer. "I don't want to make this into another thing you have to carry," she said quickly. "I'm not saying it because I want to win. I'm not saying it because I want to be dramatic." "You're attracted to me," Tessa said. Vivienne's eyes held hers. "Yes." Tessa looked toward the rain. For a long time, neither woman spoke. Then Tessa said, "I hate you a little." "That seems fair. You make me realize he was loved before me." Vivienne's expression went still. Tessa kept going. "And I think I might be attracted to you, which is frankly inconvenient." Vivienne's lips parted. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's not your fault. It could still be bad timing." "It is absolutely bad timing." That made them both laugh, quietly, almost guiltily. Then Tessa's face grew serious again. "Do you like me because I'm close to him," she asked, "or because I'm me?" Vivienne did not answer immediately. "Maybe it started with him," she said. "Now it doesn't." Tessa looked at her. The space between their chairs felt suddenly smaller. She reached across the table and touched Vivienne's wrist. Vivienne looked down at her hand. Tessa's voice was barely above a whisper. "Can I kiss you?" Vivienne's eyes lifted. "Not for him," Tessa said. Vivienne's expression broke open in the smallest way. She nodded. The kiss was brief. Soft. Not a claim. Not a performance. Not an answer to every question waiting outside the bookstore. When they pulled apart, Vivienne's eyes were bright. Tessa leaned back first. "We're still in trouble," she said. "Yes." "Good. Good. I don't trust anything that gets easy too quickly." Julian was waiting downstairs when they came out. He did not ask what happened. He did not search their faces for a verdict. He simply opened the umbrella and held it over them both. Tessa took it from him. "Walk with us," she said. Vivienne's flight to London was scheduled for the next morning. At midnight, she texted Julian. "Can we meet at the Arden?" Tessa was already with him when the message came through. They were sitting on the floor of Julian's apartment, eating Thai food from cartons and pretending they were not both waiting for the phone to buzz. Tessa read the message over his shoulder. "Go," she said. "Come with me." She looked at him. "Is that what you want?" "Yes. Or is that what you think you're supposed to say?" He reached for her hand. "It's what I want." The Arden's lounge was quieter than it had been on premiere night. The piano stood dark in the corner. Vivienne's suitcase rested beside the booth, one handle extended. She looked exhausted. Tessa slid into the booth first. Julian sat opposite them. The same arrangement as before. Only now, no one was pretending the night could be simple. Vivienne folded her hands. "I was going to leave," she said. Julian nodded. "You still can." "I know. I mean it." She looked at him. "That's new." "It is." Tessa's thumb turned the silver ring once. Then she stopped herself. "I need to say something before this goes any further," she said. Vivienne nodded. Tessa looked between them. "I will not be the transition while you two decide whether your old relationship is unfinished." Julian said nothing. "I will not be told that I should be grateful you're both being honest while I'm quietly miserable. I won't do secret rules. I won't do private conversations that affect all three of us. And I won't pretend I'm fine with something when I'm not, just so everyone can keep calling me mature." Vivienne nodded slowly. "That's fair. It's not a negotiation." "I know." Tessa looked at Julian. "And you?" "Yes. You don't get to keep us both because you're good at making people feel seen." He swallowed. For the first time, something like shame moved across his face. "You're right," he said. "I know." A faint smile touched her mouth, then vanished. Julian looked down at his hands. "There was a moment," he said, "when I liked that both of you were still here." No one interrupted him. "I liked being wanted. I liked feeling like somehow I had not lost anything. And that was selfish." Tessa's expression did not soften. He continued. "I don't want that feeling to become the cost of either of you staying." Vivienne looked at him closely. "What are you asking for?" she said. Julian lifted his eyes. "Nothing you don't choose." The hotel clock in the lobby clicked softly. Outside, a car door closed. Vivienne glanced toward her suitcase. "My car comes in 45 minutes. Tessa looked at her. "Do you want to leave?" Vivienne's face tightened. "I don't know." "Do you want to stay?" "I don't know that either." Tessa reached across the table. "Not for Julian. For Vivienne." "I don't need you to stay for me," she said. "But I don't want you to leave because you're scared and call it maturity." Vivienne stared at their hands. "I've done that before," she said. "I know. And if I stay? Then you stay because you want to try. Not because you're trying to beat me." Vivienne let out a shaky breath. "I don't want to beat you." Tessa's fingers closed around hers. "Good." Julian watched them. Something inside him shifted. Not relief. Not triumph. Responsibility. They talked until the lounge staff began stacking chairs at the far end of the room. They made rules because romance without rules had already hurt them enough. No hiding dates or feelings because someone wanted to avoid a difficult conversation. No default hierarchy disguised as politeness. No treating Vivienne as a guest in a life Julian and Tessa already owned. No treating Tessa as a temporary chapter while Vivienne decided whether she could stay. No speaking for someone else's feelings. Anyone could pause. Anyone could leave. Once a week, they would sit down together and say the things they were tempted to turn into silence. 1 month, Tessa said. 1 month, Vivienne repeated. Julian nodded. Slowly, he said. Vivienne looked at him. Slowly is not your natural pace. No, he admitted. But I'm learning. At 3:45, the car arrived. Vivienne stood in the hotel lobby with her suitcase beside her, passport and boarding pass clutched in one hand. The rain had stopped. The revolving doors turned lazily as a few late-night guests crossed the marble floor. The driver waited under the canopy outside. Vivienne looked at the car. Then at Julian. Then at Tessa. I'm afraid, she said. Tessa stepped closer. You should be. Vivienne gave a small laugh that sounded close to tears. You're very comforting. I'm not trying to be comforting. I'm trying to be honest. Julian looked at Vivienne's suitcase. Then he picked it up. For one terrible second, Vivienne thought he was taking it to the car. Instead, he carried it to a long leather bench in the center of the lobby and set it down there. Not outside. Not inside. Between. Tessa watched him. Vivienne did too. Julian turned toward them. His voice was quiet, but the empty lobby made it carry. Tessa is not a consolation after Vivienne, he said. Vivienne is not a problem I need to solve for Tessa. He looked at Tessa first. Then Vivienne. I love you both differently. I'm not asking either of you to become smaller so I can keep you. The driver outside glanced in, then politely looked away. Julian continued. If you get in that car, I'll walk you to the door. I won't punish you for leaving. I won't call it abandonment because I'm hurt. Vivienne's eyes filled. If you stay, he said, I won't treat it like something you owe me. I won't make your fear into a promise. But I'm done letting silence decide things for me. For a moment, no one moved. The lobby seemed to hold its breath. Then Tessa stepped toward Vivienne. I don't need you to choose me over him, she said. Vivienne looked at her. I know. I just need you to stop leaving before anyone gets a chance to choose you too. That did it. Vivienne looked toward the car. Then toward the suitcase on the bench. She took out her phone. Her hands shook as she opened the airline app. Julian did not move. Tessa did not move. Vivienne changed her flight. Not cancelled. Not permanent. 1 month later. When she looked up, she was crying quietly. I'm staying, she said. Tessa crossed the space first and wrapped her arms around her. It was not victory. It was not rescue. It was two women holding each other because both had finally admitted they were afraid of being left. Vivienne pressed her face against Tessa's shoulder. I'm not staying because he asked me to, she whispered. Tessa held her tighter. I know. I'm staying because you made it feel like staying doesn't have to mean disappearing. Tessa pulled back. Vivienne looked at her. Then she kissed her. Slowly. With a kind of certainty that did not need an audience. When they separated, Tessa turned toward Julian. He had not moved closer. He was watching them with a softness that hurt to look at. Are you sure? He asked. Tessa nodded. Vivienne nodded too. Only then did Julian step forward. A month later, the Ardennes rooftop cinema showed an old black and white romance beneath a cool October sky. The screen rippled slightly in the wind. Manhattan glowed around them, windows stacked into the dark like thousands of small, private lives. Julian sat between Tessa and Vivienne on a low outdoor sofa, a blanket stretched over all three of them. Tessa had her shoes off. Vivienne had brought a small paper bag of pistachios from a shop downtown. Julian had 3 drinks on the table in front of them, Tessa's gin and tonic, Vivienne's red wine, his own whiskey. The month had not been easy. Tessa had cried once in Julian's kitchen after Vivienne received a call from London and disappeared into the hallway for 20 minutes. Vivienne had nearly booked another flight after seeing Tessa asleep against Julian's chest one morning and feeling, irrationally and sharply, like an intruder. Julian had learned that apologies were not the same thing as repair. They had argued. They had stopped conversations before they became cruel. They had learned that jealousy could be spoken aloud without becoming a weapon. Vivienne still planned to return to London eventually to sort out her apartment, her work, the life she had left suspended. But the flight was no longer an escape hatch. Tessa still turned the ring on her finger when she was nervous. But now, sometimes, Vivienne caught her hand and stilled it. Julian had become less charming in the ways that mattered. He had stopped filling every silence. He had stopped assuming calm meant agreement. He had started asking questions he was afraid of hearing answers to. On the rooftop, the movie ended with a couple running through a train station in the rain. The audience applauded. Julian looked at the two women beside him. "So," he said, "if someone asks me how to explain her." Tessa turned toward him. "You don't explain us." Vivienne smiled. "You just don't hide." Julian looked down. Then laughed softly. Tessa leaned in and kissed him first. Vivienne reached for Tessa's hand and pulled her closer. The city wind moved around them. The lights below blurred at the edges. Somewhere across the rooftop, someone opened a bottle of champagne and laughed too loudly. Julian held both of them for a moment without trying to name what they were. He did not need to. For once, no one was standing at the edge of a door. No one was being asked to wait in the hallway while someone else decided. They were there. All of them. Seen clearly. Chosen without being compared. And beneath the wide dark sky over New York, that felt like the beginning of something worth staying for.